Dear listeners, before we begin today's episode, a quick announcement. Tomorrow we'll publish a special episode of an Indian Express podcast in collaboration with Sports for All, where Indian Express's Preksha Jain will be in conversation with Vishwas Choksi and Rishikesh Joshi, founders of Sports for All or SFA. And they'll discuss how SFA has transformed the landscape of school sports by promoting inclusivity and equal opportunities for all individuals, regardless of background, age, or gender. So don't forget to tune in tomorrow at 11 a.m. Now on with the show.
Hi, I'm Rahel Philipose and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express News Show. In this episode, we talk about how the police in Chhattisgarh cracked a 5-year-old murder case. We also discuss why the United World Wrestling suspended India from participating in the World Wrestling Championship. But first, we talk about India's workforce. At one point during his Independence Day speech this year, Prime Minister Narendra Modi specifically addressed the youth of the nation and talked about the opportunities that they could avail today. He said, today, while the countries around the world are witnessing an age structure that is growing old, India is moving energetically towards its youthful age structure. It is a period of great pride because today India has the highest population under the age of 30.
आज पूरे विश्व में लोग वहां देशों की उम्र ढल रही ढलाव पर है, तो भारत युवान की तरफ ऊर्जावान होकर के बढ़ रहा है। कितने बड़े गौरव का कालखंड है कि आज 30 साल की कम आयु की जनसंख्या दुनिया में सर्वाधिक कहीं है, तो ये मेरे भारत मां की गोद में है, ये मेरे देश में है।
Later in his speech, the Prime Minister also said that the youth of the country are fortunate, adding that people hardly get the kind of opportunity that our youngsters are getting now, and so we don't want to lose it.
ये जरूर कहना चाहूंगा, जो सौभाग्य आज मेरे युवाओं को मिला है, ऐसा सौभाग्य शायद ही किसी के नसीब होता है जो आपके नसीब हुआ है, और इसलिए हमें ये गंवाना नहीं है। वह शक्ति और मेरा भरोसा।
He also said that there is huge potential in our youth power and our policies as well as our ways provide an enabling environment to strengthen it. But in his latest column, the Indian Express's Udit Misra points to data by the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, the analysis of which shows that while India might have the most youthful population, its workforce is rapidly aging, meaning that young people in India today are actually being driven out of the workforce. In this segment, my colleague Shashank Bhargava speaks to Udit about what this means for India and what can be done about it.
Udit, before we begin, could you just define what exactly an aging workforce is?
Yeah, so when we talk about a workforce, we essentially mean the whole lot of people who are actually in employment or who have a job. And that is where it is different from, say, labor force, which is the pool of people who are either in jobs or looking for a job. And then there are people who are outside the labor force also. These are the people who do not even look for a job. So maybe a 3-year-old kid or a 90-year-old man may not be even looking for a job. So that's how the population is sort of divided. So when we talk about our workforce getting aging, we basically mean that the proportion of higher ages or age group people in the workforce is rising. That of the, say, 100 people, there are more older people now than younger people. And why this is an issue in India today right now is because we are otherwise a very young population. We have the highest proportion of people under 30 anywhere in the world. So, and the Prime Minister mentioned this very fact in the Independence Day speech. So it looks very paradoxical that a country which has so many young people has a workforce which is rapidly aging.
Right, and Udit, why is that the case? Because it does seem paradoxical for a country that has the most number of young people in the world, something that most countries would be envious about. So what is the reason that this very young workforce is rapidly aging?
So, what is very clear, if we look at, say, the employment rates of, say, 15-year age cohorts, we find that obviously the employment rates, which is the number of people who are with a job in a particular age group as against the total population of that age group. So if we were to divide our workforce between 15 years to under 30, and then from 30 to 45, and then 45 and above, those three categories, we find that the employment rate of the youth, as it were, that is between 15 and just under 30, that employment rate is not only fairly low, but also falling. And frankly, the employment rate of those above 45 and above is rising and higher. So it basically is showing that the young people are getting elbowed out of the jobs market, So when people are recruiting, they are preferring people with more experience and at higher age groups. And that the young are not being able to make a case for themselves in the jobs market. Now, what is the reason for that is a separate question again. But on the face of it, it is basically that the young people are not able to make their mark in the jobs market.
And does that have to do with the fact that there aren't enough job opportunities in the country?
Yeah. So, most of the focus in general times has been on the fact that there are few job opportunities, not enough jobs, and a lot of people, especially in the youth, do not have jobs. So we have very high youth unemployment levels, and we have unemployment levels tend to rise with education. So you have more unemployment in amongst those who have PhDs than those who have just cleared class 12th exam. And that's a very poor thing to have in an economy, because basically then you see that there is a penalty for studying more and that people are not able to make use of that extra education. And this also raises a question mark on the employability or the skill set of the people. So what are these people studying that is not even of any worth, that does not open any doors, any job opportunities for them? So the fact that we have fewer jobs for that population, that is one concern. But even within the jobs that exist, the young are getting elbowed out. And that reflects more a question of employability, not having the right skill set. And so both the things are a concern and both must be tackled by the policymakers.
Right. And from the perspective of developing skills, what is being taught to young people will have to massively change, right?
Yeah. So I think there is a massive mismatch between what Indians are studying and how well that has been taught and what they need to sort of get a job. So that link between what you learn in your schools, colleges, technical institutes, and what you need to get a job, that link is broken. And I think that requires a lot of reform, a lot of focus. And we've been talking about skilling for a very long time now across different governments. But I don't think that massive improvements have happened there. That remains still an area of modest success. And this is what it is showing, that people are studying a lot, but they're not getting a job. They're not employable. So there is an unemployment problem and there is an unemployability problem.
And Udit, could you also just talk about the kind of burden an aging population puts on a country? Because this is something we know that China, for example, is facing right now.
Yeah, so see, the normal functioning of the economy, the demographic dividend that we typically talk about, is that there comes a time when the population in the youthful ages experiences a bulge, which is what is happening to India. Now, if at that time, that youthful population is productive, it is earning, then it will be saving money and it will be able to actually pay off for smaller dependencies like the people who are in the older age group or the people who are in the younger age group, because those numbers are smaller and this is a huge bulge which is earning a lot. But now you have this odd thing where the productive part or the income generation part is coming from the older age group. And a large part of that so-called bulge, which was supposed to provide an economic boom, is not providing. So what you're looking forward at later stage is that as this bulge goes away, and people can say whether it will go away 2040 or 2045 or 60, but at some point this demographic dividend, as we call it, will go away. And at that point, we'll find that we do not have the productive resources, the savings, or we would not have grown as much by that time to take care of all the population. We wouldn't have had the money. So there is a simple line that captures this, that India may grow old before it becomes rich, which has also happened with China. And mind you that China has grown like crazy in the last 4 decades, right? But even after growing at something like 8 or 9%, repeatedly, year after year, decade after decade, there are now worries that China may eventually end up being older without being as rich. And India is not being able to match China's step in that sense over time. So if we were to even fall behind China's growth rate, we are likely to have a worse off scenario to deal with. And that's the worry, that we will become an older country at some point, 20, 30 years down the line, but we would not have made as much money in this period. And it is very similar to how an individual would think that if you have earned enough money, you'll have a good retirement. But if the economy has not earned enough during the bulge period, then it would have a bad retirement. It'll have a tough retirement. That is the worry.
And next we talk about how the police managed to crack a murder case in Chhattisgarh after 5 long years. In 2018, a local news anchor named Salma Sultana Lashkar was allegedly murdered by her live-in partner, a gym instructor named Madhu Sahu. Months later, her family filed a missing complaint, but no progress was made in the case and the police soon abandoned it. However, in March of this year, the local police decided to reopen the case and discovered several discrepancies in the earlier investigation. During their probe, the police managed to pinpoint the exact location where Madhu and 2 of his friends had buried Salma's body in 2018. After an 11-hour operation, they uncovered a skeleton buried about 8 meters below the surface of a national highway, which they believed to be Salma's remains. In this segment, the Indian Express's Jayprakash S Naidu joins us to talk about what happened to Salma and how this case ultimately unraveled. So Jayprakash, we understand that Salma and her partner seem to have had a rather turbulent relationship. Can you talk to us about it?
Yes. So Salma Sultana Lashkar, she was in a live-in relationship with the main accused, Madhur Sahu. This guy is a gym instructor and he is a well-known person in the city circle. Now, what happened is that Madhur Sahu, as per police sources, he was already divorced. After getting divorced, he was in a live-in relationship with Salma, and with her also he had commitment issues. And Salma used to suspect his character that he was having an affair with another woman, which the police said was true. And Madhur also used to suspect Salma's character. And then Madhur had taken a loan of some 7 to 8 lakh rupees in Salma's name. He used her identification cards to take the loan, and then Salma was dependent on Madhur Sahu for monetary needs. So these were some of the reasons, because of which the fights used to take place.
Right. And could you tell us what happened between the 2 of them in the lead up to the murder?
So the murder took place on 21st of October in 2018. So on the fateful day, Sahu and Salma, they had a fight. And at the time of the fight, there were 2 more women who were present in the room. So they again fought over the same thing. Salma was suspecting that Sahu is having an affair, which the police said was true. He was having an affair. And then after the fight took place, Sahu called up the second accused. His name is Kaushal Shrivas. Now he came over there and both of them murdered Salma. She was strangulated to death by them.
And had a police investigation taken place back then?
Investigation did happen at the time, but as per the police sources, these accused people have seen some movies and have taken some ideas from the movies. So what they did was, after they created a narrative that Salma has left for Pune, and then they took her mobile phone, they sent messages to her relatives saying that she is leaving for Pune. Then one of the accused also went with the mobile phone till the railway station to show that, she had gone to the railway station. So when the police checked the CDR, it showed that she was at the railway station and they felt that she must have left to Pune, and she had sent messages saying that she is going to Pune. But then again, the police officials who investigated the matter now did tell us off the record that there were anomalies at that time which the police did not check. They could have, but they missed it. So that's what happened at that time. The case was shut. It was a missing complaint, and the police did not investigate the missing complaint further.
Right. And Jayprakash, we're talking about it today because the police has reopened the case. So what prompted them to reinvestigate Salma's murder?
So there is this IPS officer, Mr. Robinson Guria. So he was working on human trafficking cases. So he wanted to see where these missing women are going from Chhattisgarh. So while reviewing the cases, Salma's case was 6th or 7th. He first went and spoke to the parents of Salma. Her father had died. He spoke to the mother and brother. So he got a lot of information from there. Then he got to know that the very same day that she went missing, the family had registered a FIR for theft of a scooter. So Salma that day had left on the scooter. So this particular thing, the police did not look into. Then FIR was registered. Then the IPS officer, he checked for banking transactions and he saw that Salma had taken out a loan, and even after going missing, somebody was paying her loans. So they then found out that it was her live-in partner, Madhur Sahu, who was paying the loans. Then they called him for questioning, but he did not come. He felt that something is wrong. So he sent a representative to find out what is wrong. And ultimately, Sahu got to know that they are onto something, and then he fled. So after Sahu became untraceable, police started, investigating the matter even more. They started questioning more and more people who were close to them. And finally, this thing came out that she is no more. She has been murdered by these three.
Right. And Jayprakash, another crucial piece in the puzzle are Salma's mortal remains. Can you talk about how Madhu and his associates disposed of her body?
So after the murder took place, Sahu called the third accused. His name is Atul Sharma. Now this Atul Sharma helped them to bury the body. So they already knew that there is this secluded spot. It's a 2-lane state highway where a new road is going to come up. So they chose that spot and they buried the body under that spot. And after that, just months later, a 4-lane national highway was made over there. So that's how they got rid of the body. And there's one more thing which is interesting is that this entire thing happened when the election code of conduct was in place back then. And he took the body while there were nakabandis, and the police did ask them, where are you going? But then this guy is known to police as well. So they didn't suspect him of doing anything wrong. So that's how he managed to do that at that time.
Right. And to recover the skeleton 5 years later, the police couldn't have simply just dug up a highway, right? How did they manage to retrieve her remains?
Yeah. So what happened is, while investigating the matter, police got to know that his friend Atul Sharma is involved in the crime. They called him for questioning. He's the one who, gave them some leads as to where the body has been buried. But the information that he gave was a bit vague. He said that, it is near that highway. But then it's like a 200-meter stretch is the information that they got. And back then there was no national highway and the trees were not cut on that highway. Now many trees were also cut. So he was saying that the body was buried near a tree. So the tree was already gone. So what the police did was they had to narrow down pinpoint the location where the body was buried, because otherwise it would have cost the government a lot of money to dig up the entire 200-meter stretch. So what they did is they made use of two technologies. With the help of NIT Raipur, they made use of satellite image and ground penetration radar technology. So these two technologies helped them to pinpoint the location where the body could be found. Now, how this science works is, as per the police officers, the soil consolidation is poor due to the digging done in that place. So they were looking for a patch where they find the soil consolidation to be poor. So this is how they pinpointed the location. Secondly, they took help of Google Earth to find out, if there was any tree nearby the area. So that also worked in their favor. Then they also went to the Public Works Department and got the survey report of all the trees that were cut at that time. And then using this 3-4 data, they managed to pinpoint that this is the 20-meter stretch where we could possibly find the body. And then the digging began. It took them some 11 hours to complete the operation, and the skeleton was found some 8 meters below the land.
Okay, and what about the accused? Did the police finally manage to nab him after he had fled?
So the investigation started in the month of March, and by May end, the police was sure that Madhur Sahu and his 2 aides have done this murder. And then they tried to trace him, but he managed to run away in the month of May. Then they got information that he is trying to come back to Korba because he wanted to destruct some evidences, like the hard disk from phone, and there were some few more evidences that he wanted to destruct. So what they did is they managed to get in touch with the people that he was coordinating with, and they planted a SIM on him. So when he came back to Korba, he was using the SIM, and they managed to trace him down and arrested him.
And in the end, we talk about Indian wrestling. Yesterday, the United World Wrestling, the world governing body for the sport, suspended India from participating in the World Wrestling Championship, which is supposed to take place next month. Now, this is yet another setback for Indian wrestling, which has been going through a crisis since January. As many of you would remember, earlier this year, India's top wrestlers like Sakshi Malik, Bajrang Punia and Vinesh Fogart had come forward to speak out against the former Wrestling Federation of India chief and BJP MP Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh and accused him of sexually harassing female wrestlers. And after months of protests and deliberations, the police eventually filed an FIR against Brij Bhushan. And he and his family members were also banned from competing in the Wrestling Federation elections. Sports Minister Anurag Thakur later also promised the wrestlers that they will take appropriate action to mitigate their concerns. And that is what led the wrestlers to stop their protest, return to the mat and prepare for the World Championships. However, as we mentioned earlier, India has been suspended from participating in the tournament. To know what this means for the Indian wrestlers, my colleague Utsa Sarmin speaks to the Indian Express's Mihir Vasavda in this segment.
So Mihir, can you first tell us why the United World Wrestling suspended India from participating in the World Wrestling Championship?
Primarily because the Wrestling Federation of India hasn't conducted its election yet. The elections were due earlier this year, but due to the protests, initially it got delayed and then twice they were supposed to be held, but on both times there were court interventions which meant it couldn't be held. Now, the United World Wrestling has been asking Wrestling Federation of India to hold its election on multiple occasions. The last time when it threatened it to suspend India was in June, when it had written to the Indian Olympic Association as well as the government, asking them that the process should be done over with quickly, else India would be suspended. They waited. They, I think, reminded once again in July. And even then, when there was no response, they have suspended India yesterday.
Right, but could you explain why is the WFA election a prerequisite for India to participate in the tournament?
So it's basically like how any regulated organization works. I mean, it's almost like, say, India having an elected government, which deals then in international relations. It's similarly, all the countries have a federation which is affiliated to an international federation, and that federation then corresponds with the elected representatives of that federation. So the federation is then responsible to send entries, to carry out development programs across the country. They are eligible to receive funding from the international bodies. There are other perks and benefits of being affiliated to an international federation. So in a nutshell, for an international federation, an elected body in a country is the point of contact to carry out all their activities, including sending entries of wrestlers for international tournaments.
So now that India has been suspended, does it mean Indian wrestlers will not be able to participate in the tournament at all?
No. So how this works out is that this is a punishment in a way, if we can use the word punishment, for the administrators for not carrying out their duties. What happens in such a scenario is that the International Federation tries its best that the athletes are not impacted. So the Indian wrestlers, say for example, the Wrestling World Championships will be held in a couple of weeks in Serbia, in Belgrade. The Indian wrestlers will be allowed to compete there, but they won't be able to display the Indian flag anywhere, either on their jerseys, or if they win a medal, then on the podium, or anywhere in the arena where in a tournament, all the participating countries, their national flags are displayed. India's flag won't be displayed over there. And similarly, if an Indian wrestler goes on to win the gold medal, then during the podium ceremony, the national anthem will not be played. So what happens is the athletes will be participating as neutrals and not as representing India.
And Mihir, does this have an impact on India's standing in the world wrestling?
It does. I mean, it's not a pleasant experience to be taking part in a competition and then not having your national flag displayed anywhere or your anthem played anywhere. I mean, we've seen in other sports, say, for example, the Russian athletes, ever since Russia invaded Ukraine, Russian athletes have been allowed to compete in multiple tournaments, but not under quote-unquote Russia. Their flags aren't displayed. They participate as independent athletes and they've won a number of medals, but nowhere has their flag been displayed or their anthem being sung. And what happens is then gradually over a period of time when there are important major international events, you go and play there. But then the other countries, they're hesitant to invite you because they fear that if they invite a sanctioned country, a suspended country, they might be at the receiving end of some action by the International Federation as well.
Right, and you mentioned why the WFI could not hold the elections yet. But has there been any communication after this recent development?
Absolutely no idea yet because there is a stay order from a high court. Now, the elections were supposed to be held on August 12th. There were two candidates, Sanjay Singh, who is a very close confidant of Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh, who, as we know, has been accused of sexual harassment by 6 women wrestlers. Standing against him is former Commonwealth Games gold medalist wrestler Anita Chevron, who is one of the corroborators in the harassment cases against Brij Bhushan. So those two are in the fray to become the next president of WFI. The elections, as we mentioned, were supposed to be held on August 12, but one day prior to that, the Punjab and Haryana High Court issued a stay order following a plea by 2 units affiliated to the Wrestling Federation of India. So everything hangs in the balance right now.
Right, and do we know if the Indian Olympic Association reacted to this latest setback?
There is no official communication, there is no official reaction yet by the Indian Olympic Association. The acting CEO of the IOA, Kalyan Chaubey, he confirmed to us that such a development has taken place. But apart from that, there is no reaction as such. The IOA is supposed to meet on Thursday, but as we speak right now, that hasn't seemed to have happened. But they were supposed to meet to decide the future course of action, but there is no official communication yet from the IOA.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Kumar. It was written and produced by Utsa, Sarmin, Shashank, Bhargava and me, Rahel Philipose. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone who you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.